I call Jackie Dean.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the previous member for raising the Cycle Tracks initiative, which has been such a huge success and will continue to be such a huge success for tourism in New Zealand. Because I want to, and I've spoken about this before, but I'm going to briefly traverse it again because I think it's worth it. The economic revitalisation of Central Otago, which has taken place because of the Central Otago Rail Trail. Mr. Speaker, a region in New Zealand which was economically struggling is now in an economic boom. And why is that, Mr. Speaker? It is because of the rail trail. Our Prime Minister recognises the benefit of this kind of initiative for rural and provincial New Zealand, and I applaud the vision of our Prime Minister in seeing the value of this kind of initiative. And I also want to thank the previous member for asking the question, well, actually displaying his complete lack of knowledge of anything that happens outside of the Beltway, in not knowing that the Prime Minister came down to Oamaru in May of this year to open the final kilometre of the Ocean to Alps Cycle Way. It is not the only kilometre, it was the final kilometre. And what a day it was, Mr. Speaker, in Oamaru. The sun shone, the temperatures were balmy. The crowds were huge, Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister of New Zealand walked down to the Oamaru Harbour and officially opened the final kilometre of the Ocean to Alps Cycleway. I think there were 2,000 people in Oamaru, which is a huge crowd for our small but very proud town. Half the town turned up on their bicycles, everyone from little kids through to grand people. There were penny farthings, there was steampunk. It was an exciting day. The town was galvanised. The town was galvanised because they understand only too clearly the economic benefit that the cycleway from the Ocean to Alps is going to bring not only to North Otago but through to South Canterbury as well. Mr. Speaker, this was an example, and I thank the member opposite for reminding me to raise it in this House, of the economic benefit and the real sustainable jobs and industry that will come as a result. And the member opposite does not understand. This does not surprise me, that the member opposite does not understand the need for small rural communities to have a sustainable economic base for growth and economic well-being. Mr. Speaker, this budget has been a good budget. I want to talk about some of the feedback we have received. Labor in 9 years in office and didn't have the boldness to cut taxes, but now they slam National for doing so. Who said that? Who do you think said that? Well, that was one of the country's most respected newspapers, the New Zealand Herald. Does this mean, it went on to say, that Labor will reverse this law and increase the taxes if they return to power? If not, then why the gripe? Am I the only one to see double standards here, asks the New Zealand Herald. Well, the news is no, they're not the only ones to see the double standard. Most of New Zealand shares that view that Labor has got severely the gripes about this budget. They go on to say the worst bit about the budget was listening to Mr Goff respond to it in Parliament. He has the oratory skills of a robot. Labor, you still look tired. You seem to have no response to National's obvious plans, and your leader can't even compete on the sound bites with Mr Harawira and Mr Norman. So that's been one slice of the feedback that has been said on behalf of this most excellent budget. I'll just give you a couple more. Bernard Hickey, this is the most comprehensive and coherent reform of New Zealand's taxation system in more than 25 years. It goes a long way to tilting the economy back towards productive investment and away from property investment. Overall, I'd give it 8.5 out of 10. Those are kind words indeed and true. The corporate tax cut is the big surprise in the budget and will give a real boost to business just when it is struggling out of the recession under the weight of tight bank lending. Mr Speaker, the reaction to this National-led government's budget has been very, very positive. Mr Speaker, last year National was busy concentrating on getting the government's finances under control, and this year we are squarely focused on the economy and building the recovery for the people of New Zealand. Budget 2010 will help build faster and more sustainable economic growth. It will contribute to rebalancing the economy so that Kiwi families, all Kiwi families, can get ahead. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand has come through the recession in pretty good shape. This is partly due to the measures that the government took back in Budget 2009, but also partly due to the resilience shown by many New Zealanders who welcome the measures brought by this national-led government. Mr. Speaker, the government finances face many challenges. We are spending more than we earn, and over the next few years, government debt will increase significantly. This budget, however, makes progress in getting back to surplus much sooner. The bottom line, Mr. Speaker, is we need to rebalance our lopsided economy and correct our fiscal imbalances. So, how will Budget 2010 help to achieve those goals? Well, first of all, this budget puts economic growth front and centre stage. Its overriding aim is to tilt the economy towards savings, investments and towards exports, and away from borrowing, away from property speculation, and certainly away from excessive government spending. Secondly, our major tax reform package features across-the-board tax cuts that help families get ahead and help keep more skilled Kiwis in New Zealand. It makes the tax system fairer and promotes faster economic growth. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the budget shows an improved fiscal outlook, where both Crown debt and budget deficits are better than forecast in last year's budget, which was in 2009. But even so, our aim is to do better still. Why not? And to get back to surplus as fast as possible. And finally, the government has stayed within its $1.1 billion allocation for new spending. In addition, we have moved another $1.8 billion over 4 years to priority frontline public services. We're spending significant amounts on health and education, and we're investing in our future with hundreds of millions of dollars invested in science, research and technology, in ultra-fast broadband, in rail and in roads. Mr. Speaker, I want to now turn to health, and I want to get some feedback from the Chief Executive of the South Canterbury District Health Board, Mr. Chris Fleming, who said, "South Canterbury District Health Board is thankful for the increase in funding announced in the budget." This money, he says, along with an estimated $1.4 million in efficiencies already planned for next year, will ensure that we can continue to provide a high level of service to the community. Despite difficult times, we are pleased that this funding has left us in a position of not needing to consider any reductions in health and disability services for financial reasons within South Canterbury over the coming year. About $295,000 of the new funding will go towards providing extra elective services. Mr. Speaker, the South Canterbury District Health Board is a relatively small district health board, but they got an extra $5 million in funding through this budget. That money will be used wisely. That money will be used for the benefits of the people of South Canterbury, and I welcome that kind of initiative in the budget. Just so for the Southern District Health Board, which is a much larger district health board, also within my area, the $20 million extra dollars given to that district health board will provide extra services for the people in my electorate and the southern part of the South Island. Mr. Speaker, this is a good budget. Mr. Speaker, I commend this budget to the House.